Dark Souls, a game praised by fans and critics for its intricate level design, challenging and creative bosses, and for its deep, rich story. The game's director, Hidetaka Miyazaki, is without a doubt one of the greatest directors and storytellers of all time. It seems that with every game, FromSoft and Miyazaki grow and develop in order to become better at polishing every new installment. And now, 7 years since the first Souls game was made, FromSoft is back with Dark Souls 3. I know my review is a little late, but I wanted to take time to understand and thoroughly play through the game before I made a review of it. And after all, it is one of my favorite game series. And ooh! Boy, is Dark Souls 3 good. So let's not waste any more time, let's get into the review. This review is going to follow my own rubric of 6 total points. In fact, each game I review is based off these points. They are story, gameplay, characters, graphics, music/sound, and idea and originality. Each category is 1 point in order to keep a fair balance. If you have questions about my rubric, I will be making a video talking about why it's important to separate an in-depth review from a personal one, and why following a rubric is key for a more, quote, professional or in-depth review. Needlessly to say, there will be spoilers in this video, so if you haven't played for whatever reason, skip to this part right here. Let's get to it.
A chosen one, born of ash, risen from a forgotten grave in Lothric, destined to unite the Lords of Cinder, Aldrich, Saint of the Deep, Baron's undead legion, and the reclusive Lord, Yorm the Giant, and Link the Fire.
Sounds simple enough, right? Nope. Boy, would you look silly if you're the one who said that. Yeah. As expected, the classic Souls storytelling formula is back, and as cryptic as ever. We still get hidden lore through item descriptions, item and enemy placements, and as well as environmental and architectural clues. In fact, it's sometimes hard not to read too much into something. Nearly every area in Dark Souls 3 has an interesting backstory that makes you want to find out by playing
And dying.
in order to figure out what's happening in the land of Lothric. In fact, some of the best stories from Souls titles come from the backstories of bosses and characters you meet along your way through the game. Dark Souls 3 is not an exception. An example I would like to use would be the Archdragon's Peak. I know it's an optional area, but the story relations and how they're expressed are great. Plus, it answers one of the biggest mysteries in the series. The Nameless King, aka Gwyn's firstborn, is actually present, and we finally get closure about what happened to him. The brilliance of this comes from the fact that you learn more about his history, and yet they leave just enough out to make room for fan speculation. Another area that needs mentioning is Farron's Keep and the area preceding it. The implications that are present start planting lore seeds in your mind. Especially after fighting the Abyss Watchers, I began questioning a lot of things that the game seemed to be trying to hint as to what is really happening here in Lothric. The story holds its deep roots and is so well thought through. Senpai Miyazaki never seems to disappoint. However, I do feel that the later areas of the game suffer a little bit. It feels rushed, and I think that's actually what happened. FromSoft had a deadline to meet, and sadly, this area didn't get finished as a result. I'm sure you know what I'm going to be talking about. This area had so much potential. The backstory was even well developed, but with nowhere to go. Now, hear me out. Could you imagine? You find Yorm and the Storm Ruler, then it turns out, as stated by the description, the sword is broken. This is where the rest of the level becomes explorable, and maybe the level could have had tie-ins with Velka. You know, considering she is the goddess of sin, and the profane capital is shrouded in greed. I mean, the streets are literally littered with gold, and Velka has dealt with greedy people before, according to the description of the Mimic Head, or Symbol of Avarice, whatever. But anyway, further into the level, you find the rest of the sword, and then are able to challenge Yorm. But no, instead it ended up being a 5-minute run of the boss fight. Oh well. Remember how much fun and how much variety Dark Souls 1 had to offer? Discovering and exploring new areas, fighting outrageous bosses, and dealing with the
Clunkiness?
Well, Dark Souls 3 has fixed all the issues of the first game in terms of fluidity. The game has mixed a great balance of speed and methodical gameplay. Also, bringing a magic bar that not only gets used by magic, but by a new mechanic called Battle Arts into the game was a fantastic decision, because it opens up so many new ways to play. More play styles adds diversity to the community, and diversity extends the multiplayer life of the game. The level design borrows from Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. There's connectivity throughout the levels, but it still retains a more linear path. This type of design adds elements of both an action game with that of an open world RPG. Overall, the game is just really smooth and fluid. Dark Souls 3 is aesthetically a really good looking game. The environments are heavily detailed and well textured, for the most part. What makes Dark Souls look and flow this well is the art direction. The levels seem to seamlessly transition into one another, and yet each area has a distinct look to it. The Gothic architecture looks the part and adds the dark, gloomy atmosphere, and the Lost Forest of the Abyss Watchers appears as a poison-filled, withering swamp, tainted with the abyss seeping from the catacombs. The world flows together really well. I mean, you don't have to deal with any of that elevator bullshit from the Poison Land to a fucking magma castle. None of that shit. But, it almost seems like I've been to half of these areas in the game before. Can't really put my finger on it. Alright, when I first played Dark Souls 3, I was worried that it was a fan service game. I mean, seeing the name Firelink pop up was like, what the fuck? It's the Candle Maiden. Okay, wait, huh? What? Okay, what the fuck is Andre doing here? I actually still don't know what the point of him is. How long has it been, huh? Just a couple thousand years.
You look good.
Well, at least every other character has an interesting story and development as you progress through the game. I mean, they actually have their own intentions and aren't flat or uninteresting. Those were 3 of my favorite songs on the OST. The composition is beautiful. It adds a layer of atmosphere that just can't be achieved by any other means. Moto Sakuraba and Yuka Kitamura, I've fucking butchered that shit. They've done a great job making the OST to fit all the overall themes and mood of the game. For some of the tracks, they even try to remix older songs from the first game, and they nailed it. For example, the Soul of Cinder fight featured a remixed track of the Gwyn theme from Dark Souls 1, and it added a beautiful tone and meaning to the fight. The overall sound design was done really well. Every hit from a weapon sounded like it had weight behind it, and every footstep sounded like the terrain you're walking on. Dark Souls 3 formula follows closely from previous games. Kill 4 strong enemies to progress, but it fits because they changed how the enemies work and what they do once you've beaten them. I mean, why fix something that isn't broken? Now for something that really bugs me. I really dislike the shifting world idea. It bugs me because I think Lothric should have been its own new land. They still could have put Anor Londo and Darkroot Garden in the game and whatever, but instead of shifting them together, we should have been able to travel to them. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's still cool to see Anor Londo in a completely different environment, but I think it would have been cooler to see it and see Lordran and the state it's in right now. Alright, now that we covered the 6 categories, let's award the points. As story, it gets a 0.89 out of 1. The gameplay is a 0.9 out of 1. Graphics, 0.88 out of 1. The characters, 0.81 out of 1. The beautiful music, a 0.92 out of 1. And lastly, the IO, a 0.85 out of 1. Added together, Dark Souls gets a 5.25 out of 6. What a great game to end a great trilogy. Thanks for watching my review, and I'll catch you later. Hey, so that marks my first review, but there should be more reviews coming out soon, so subscribe to get notified when I release new videos. Plus, it'll help me out a lot. I mean, it's a new channel, so help me out.
Mine just good enough for you, baby.
But anyway, thanks, my dudes. Bye.